The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Oh, and from behind the blue curtain in occupied territory, I am Brett Witterble sitting in for Laura Ingraham. I'll be keeping you company for the next 3 hours as I broadcast across this beautiful nation, this amazing country caught in the midst of so much political turmoil and fighting and back and forth right here on the Laura Ingraham Show. And this is going to be a two-way conversation for sure. We got some great guests that are coming up. Also, want to take your phone calls, and I want to give you something to think about right up front here. And it's this. Have we hit peak accusation yet? Have we peaked in this thing yet? We know Al Franken is now in trouble. We obviously know the saga of Roy Moore and what's been going on there for the last couple of weeks or so. But is it going to get even? Is it going to get even hotter? Is it going to get even worse? I want to hear from you at 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. Don't forget, absolute destination reading every day when you get up. Check out lifezet.com, and of course, follow Laura on Twitter at Ingraham Angle, You know, looking at the way this battle is going back and forth, and especially with the revelations yesterday that came out from Leanne Tweeden talking about Al Franken, you know, it occurs to me that we are witnessing a transformation, not just of the political and not just of the entertainment business and not just of all that sort of stuff, but we're seeing a transformation of the culture. We're seeing a cultural shift happen here. And once again, it's being driven by the elites. Think about this now. How many conversations have you had with your family around the dinner table, your kids in the car, involving perversion, sexual assaults, things like that, prior to the revelations of Harvey Weinstein and Hollyweird? Probably not a lot. I think we all kind of just assumed that the people in Hollywood had some pretty oddball proclivities. We knew there were definitely people out there that you would want to stay away from. There were probably predators in the business. The tales of the casting couch are as old as Hollywood itself. But it was never really like a popular conversation item. It was never the sort of thing that you brought up around the dinner table. Hey, did you see who's accused of rape today? Did you see who's accused of sexual harassment? Did you see who's accused of any number of things? It wasn't anything that was introduced into the culture organically. It was driven by, obviously, the piece that came out from Ronan Farrow, and obviously the revelations by Rose McGowan and Harvey Weinstein, and then it was Katie bar the door. Then it was an absolute feeding frenzy as America would now be subjected to this conversation. But yesterday was a transformational moment, and I'm going to tell you why this is. The two pillars of liberal power in this country are Hollywood and the establishment in Washington, D.C., right? You've got the establishment media. You have people that are entrenched in Washington, D.C., looking to remake and control your lives from every angle, all of our lives from every angle. But it wasn't until yesterday with Leanne Tweeden coming out about Al Franken that we actually saw the bridging of the two, the marriage of the two. Hollywood and those abuse allegations, those were sort of segregated, right? They were over here on the left coast. It was a bunch of bad people, a bunch of perverts, a bunch of people who are there in the entertainment business doing what we kind of expect them to do. And the politicians, sure, we know about philandering. I mean, come on, La Brasserie and Chris Dodd and Ted Kennedy and the waitress sandwich, and we lived through the saga of the Clintons in the 1990s. They always kind of existed in parallel universes. But yesterday they bridged because Al Franken is both politician and Hollywood celebrity. Stuart Smalley, movies, Saturday Night Live, and let's not forget a failed Air America host. That's right. So for the first time, you actually had the bridging of that gap, the bridging of that divide, where Hollywood and DC's proclivities spilled into each other. And now we have critical mass. Now we have critical mass. Because as long as it was just Hollywood, as long as it was just allegations against Brett Ratner or against Harvey Weinstein or Kevin Spacey or any of that sort of stuff, you can kind of shrug it off and be like, oh, it's over there, it's over there. Even with the Roy Moore allegations, right? And these are just allegations that have not been proven. I mean, we've got a yearbook with a signature and Gloria Allred press conferences. But even with what we've seen with the Roy Moore saga down in Alabama, it was basically dismissed as, de rigueur, right? You look at it and you say, it's politics, it's politicians, it's the ugly media going after another conservative, yada yada yada, right? It would almost in traditional senses have an eye roll, but it was that event yesterday that got everybody's attention with Leanne Tweeden coming out and saying what she said about Al Franken, and then the photograph. That photograph is devastating. That photograph is reminiscent to me, because I'm old enough to remember this, of Gary Hart with a young lady on his lap on The Monkey Business. That photograph is on par with Bill Clinton at the rope line shaking hands with Monica Lewinsky as she wears the beret. I mean, we these iconic images that symbolize the scandals of our lives. Sounds like a soap opera, doesn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, these are the scandals of our lives. But you look at all these things and they all would operate. These things all operated sort of in a disconnected fashion. Oh, that's D.C. That's a pervy senator. That's a congressperson. That's Hollywood. But when they come together, now they're going to dominate every aspect of our lives. Every aspect of our lives and every aspect of the conversation. That photograph yesterday of Al Franken, even though it happened before he was a senator, even though it is 11 years old, right? 2006. That photograph of Al Franken, it pretty much sums up everything wrong with the abuse of power in the country. It really does. I don't like to do on my own show here in San Diego, I don't like to do the if-then. Well, if it were Congressman this, then this would happen. I don't like to do the if-then. If it was a Democrat, then. But just imagine for a moment, heaven forbid, just imagine for a moment that was one of the icons of the conservative movement. Imagine instead of it being Al Franken, it was a senator maybe you admire for a brave stance they take, or a congressperson for a brave stance they take, and it was that kind of a grabby pitch. Oh my gosh. There would already be a march planned for this weekend in Washington, D.C. Are you kidding me? And yet, when you watch this barrage of what happened yesterday in D.C., well, you get the tax cut passage out of the House, and we'll certainly talk about that in just a little bit at 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. But as you see what happened yesterday, Menendez and the mistrial, Menendez acting like he's been exonerated, Al Franken referring himself to the Ethics Committee, and Chuck Schumer agreeing with him the fact that he has to go to the Ethics Committee, and Mitch McConnell agreeing that he has to go to the Ethics Committee, the revelations from Jackie Spear and Barbara Comstock in the last 3 days, and then you throw into the big pile there this ongoing conversation of what's happening with Roy Moore in Alabama. And folks, this is the topic. This is the topic. This is right there with Bill Clinton and and those uncomfortable conversations with teenagers in the car or at the dinner table throughout the 1990s. This is Joe Biden deciding unilaterally he's going to go on a Sunday show and talk about redefining marriage. This is now the shift. This is now the discussion point, and it's going to bleed into every part of our lives. It's going to bleed into every part of our lives. Moms and dads are going to have to talk to their daughters now about the realities of dirty old men and maybe dirty young men at schools and the workplace, things like that. Moms and dads are going to have conversations with their sons and really reinforce the right sort of behavior. And I'm confident that so many in this audience do that already, but navigating this minefield, right? This is now the new conversation. This is now the new discussion. This is where we are. And what prompted it? What prompted it is Hollywood not being able to control themselves and a bunch of politicians who decided that they could do what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it on their own terms. We are in a different space here, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a different space in 2017 looking at 2018. And so I want to get your thoughts on this at 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. Is this the new normal? Have we hit peak scandal? Is it going to get worse? Do you think it's a witch hunt? And how does it all shake out as we stare headlong into the holiday season? As Republicans and Democrats gather around tables sneering at each other, the topic will likely not be Russia and collusion. It may very well be misbehavior and sexual deeds and confusion. 855-40-LAURA on Twitter, at Ingram Angle. I am Brett Witterbull, sitting in for Laura Ingram. It is your Healthy Radio Addiction. Laura Ingram Show, back right after this.
Thanks to my wonderful sponsors and your support, I'm glad to say that we can provide this podcast at no cost to you at all. As a loyal listener of my program, please consider testing our sponsors because they're the ones who actually cover the cost to produce this daily show. So if you're a dog lover like I am, how about giving your dog, your best friend, a fresh, healthy, and nutritious diet? When dogs eat well, they live longer and happier lives. I'm here to tell you about NomNomNow.com, which cooks the world's best dog food. It's made fresh in the USA and delivered right to your door every week. Nom Nom Now's customized recipes cook fresh in our kitchen, delivering healthy nutrition you can actually see. Switch to Nom Nom Now and your dog will have more energy, a shinier, softer coat, and a longer, better life. Nom Nom Now really is the best food for your best friend. And right now you can save 50% on your first 2 orders of fresh, healthy dog food when you use my code Laura at NomNomNow.com. That's code Laura and save 50% on your first 2 orders. NomNom now.com and code word LAURA.
And it's a beautiful day. It's a Friday. Are you kidding me? Who's happier than us as we get ready for the long Thanksgiving week straight ahead? It is great to be with you. I am Brett Witterbull. I'm heard daily in San Diego from 3 to 7 in the afternoon on 760 KFMB. And it is so good to be sitting in for Laura Ingram. Don't forget to follow Laura on Twitter at Ingram Angle and check out LifeSet every single day. And, of course, Laura's great show on the Fox News channel every single night. It's so great to have her there in our living rooms, breaking it down with her unique analysis, which is just top-notch. Let's go out on the phones and check in with some of the great listeners here. Maureen in Indiana says here you're a former sex crimes prosecutor and you wanted to weigh in on Franken and more and all that. Hello, Maureen. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks. Yes, I can't believe there's not an immediate call for Al Franken to step down in light of, obvious overwhelming evidence of his wrongdoing and sexual assault. And I don't know why you'd need an investigation unless if he had said, that's not me, that's photoshopped, I didn't do that, then there should be an investigation. He's admitted that that's him, that he did it. And an apology just doesn't cut it. That's sexual assault. And if we're going to tolerate that, I'm afraid for our daughters and other women in this country. And I'm looking for all the Democrat women to stand up and call for his resignation immediately, because they don't want to be seen as hypocrites either. And with respect to Roy Moore, those are allegations, and I have not had a chance to really sit down and really hear all the evidence. I think one thing that this shows us, and as a former sex crimes prosecutor, you just really, really hope that more and more women and girls would feel the confidence and the courage to stand up and let their abuse be known. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's very difficult. And now the last thing you want as a prosecutor, though, because you do have to look at, what might be motivating these women to. Is it possible that they're not true? Is there some other motivation? And one thing you look for is, the timing. Because the timing does have an effect. So, unfortunately for the voters in Alabama, they're not going to really have answers before this election in all likelihood.
Right. And it's a great point, Maureen, in Indiana, and I appreciate that insight and that analysis. The thing to remember, though, about Moore's allegations is this isn't going to be adjudicated in court. This is a political campaign, and we're like 25 days away from the election. And so this is going to be the sort of thing that has to be responded to aggressively, directly, and really this is up to Judge Moore to really steer the ship here and the people of Alabama to make that decision. They're the ultimate jury here. They're the ultimate jury, and they're going to have to make that decision as to whether or not these allegations hold him back from being in the United States Senate. Now, in terms of Franken going through the process with the Ethics Committee, I think it's fundamental. I think it's a good thing because this puts Mitch McConnell in the spotlight. He has to run this ethics investigation. He was the one who oversaw the Ethics Committee when Bob Packwood was expelled, and he's going to have to run through this with Chuck Schumer and the people on that committee to see if this meets that standard. That photograph is damning evidence, though. There's no way to dodge that point. That is, let me tell you something. That is the picture of the scandal, of the entire scandal, going even into the Harvey Weinstein stuff and the Spacey stuff. This is the picture of the scandal because while he's a senator now, Franken's a senator now. That's Hollywood. I'm entitled. I can grab a sleeping woman or a sleeping girl, and I can act like a perv, and I can, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks here straight ahead. Kevin's in Oregon. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to the Laura Ingraham Show. Brett Winterble sitting in.
Yes. This whole sexual harassment thing in high places, I'm really glad that it's coming out because we've got a situation in this freaked out, weird, liberal state of Oregon that I live in, unfortunately. In the House, we've got a House member that has now been accused of the same type of things with another House member. And I don't understand why this type of stuff is, why do they think that they can do it and get away with it? I mean, we have the people's business to take care of, and
yes.
We get these goons in there that, all they're looking for is job security. They believe that they can commit any type of act or crime or misdeed.
That's it. That's it. You just nailed it. That's what it is. They think they can commit any kind of crime. They think they've got job security. It's a great point. You're talking about entitlement, a culture of entitlement. You look at these politicians. Many of them have never worked in the private sector. They've never been held accountable to an HR department. They've never been held accountable to a boss, to a manager. These are people who they go to college, they go to law school, then they go right into the political pipeline, and they got a job for life. Because once you get elected, it's hard to get somebody out. Once you're a bureaucrat, once you're an administrator, they got all kinds of rules to keep them in. And that's the fundamental problem here, isn't it? It's the idea that, well, you know what? We protect our own because if we don't protect our own, then they're going to come after us next week. I mean, it's unbelievable. Marlon in Michigan, you say you don't think it's a different climate. What's going on, Marlon?
What's going on? Yeah, I don't think it's a different climate because, you go back in time, like in the 80s and 90s, it was known that the pages were being used as like prostitutes by a specific senator or a person in Congress. I feel like, one of the things that you got to be careful of, even looking with all these things that's going on today, is that, all these people in the elites were ignoring these things. People in the media was aware of certain things and wasn't following things. And so now what's going to happen is that you have a platform that's being set up for a Michelle Obama or whatever to come in. And because the Democrats have absolutely nothing to run on, you put a male up against a liberal female that's talking about some, women issues. And it's like, what male is going to stand up and say, no, I don't agree with that? And I think that the one thing we have to be careful of is, why would anyone allow now the same liberal people that's been, hiding all of the Clinton, everything, and just in general, they have them write the regulations.
100%. This is exactly right. It's the foxes guarding the hen house. Ralph Norman's going to be up next, Republican from South Carolina that talks tax reform. We'll take your phone calls too. Brett Winterble in for Laura Ingraham, your healthy radio addiction. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
'Cause I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man.
It is Brett Winterble sitting in for Laura Ingraham on the Laura Ingraham Show, your healthy radio addiction. Well, against the backdrop of the he said, she said, they denied, all that stuff yesterday, there was a little bit of progress made in the House of Representatives as the tax reform bill made it out with some votes to spare, by the way. I want to welcome to the program Representative Ralph Norman. He's a Republican from South Carolina. You know, one of those lower tax states, not one of those big blue, spendy, expensive states. Great to have you here, Congressman. How are you?
Doing fine, Brett. Glad to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So, look, we saw a lot made about the SALT. We saw a lot made about, you know, the standard deductions doubling, and that's not going to make up for all the other goodies and things like that. But at its core, this is quite a significant accomplishment because it's actual tax reform, and that has not been accomplished in a generation. And how are you feeling one day removed from this, getting ready to go home and talk to your constituents? What's your prognosis on this, Congressman?
Well, let me give you an overview. You know, you're right. It's been 31 years since anything has been done at all. And, you know, I'm in the business arena. I made my living on the real estate development. The best deal is when nobody gets everything they want. And that's what I can say about this tax reform that we've had. And the fact that it's going to incentivize business, and you know, that's what's going to bring this country back. That's why the stock market's reacting like it is. That's why you know, businesses from Stuart Barney up to your economists are saying this is really reform, and it's giving people control over their money. And I'm excited about it. It's going to mean jobs. And the figures that I hear thrown about, 1.5 trillion added to the economy, it's just a great day. And nobody thought we were going to do this. We got zero help from the Democrats. Not one Democrat voted for this thing. That's what's disappointing because, and we had a lot of them tell us that they agreed with it, but for one reason or another, they wanted the Republicans to fail. But we succeeded.
Yeah. You know, look, I think the scales fell away from people's eyes in those weeks immediately following the election about a year ago. And I think, you know, we all kind of felt like we went into 8 years of suspended animation, certainly on the economy side of things. I mean, with 3% annualized GDP, if you were lucky, it was a horror. I'm sorry, 1% annualized GDP if you were lucky. It was an insane thing. And now you watch 5 trillion added to valuations out there in the stock market. And sure, that helps the tech companies and things like that, but it also helps 401ks and pensions and retirement funds. And yep, people feel confident enough to start buying real estate again, don't they? They feel like it's time to maybe go long on the economy, buy a house, new household formations. This will add another $1.5 trillion to that. And look, could we be seeing maybe in the neighborhood of 4+% growth in the economy?
I think it's going to be greater than that. But even if it's not, let's say if we hover at 3%, and you're exactly right, the last 8 years has been 1.5% growth, which is anemic at best. Now, and I can see it out there in the 5th District, the businesses that I've gone to talk with are excited. I mean, look at the expensing part of this. A farmer can buy a tractor. A mechanic can add more equipment. It's just it's real dollars to get the corporate rate down. And you know what I hate to hear is rich, poor, black, white. That's so divisive. You know, the corporations don't pay tax, people do. And that's what I hope to get across as we take this week to visit and go see the businesses and explain what actually happened, which is really going to be transformational, and it's going to let people have control of their money. Savings accounts are going to go up. It's a new day, and I will say President Trump, who addressed our caucus yesterday, is doing a great job. He's you may not like the way he does it, but the guy is doing a great job. His promotion of this tax, having him backing us on the tax reform was monumental.
Let me ask you this, and I don't want you to give up any anything that was confidential or in confidence in that address yesterday when he was talking, but I just want to get a general sense from when he was speaking to the conference there yesterday. Did you get the impression that he was comfortable and understood the challenges that are being balanced here, especially between the high tax blue states and the more growth oriented lower tax red states like South Carolina? Did you get a sense that he understood those nuances and the divides in that room?
Yeah, and here's what he did. In the room, he called up Peter King. Now, Peter King is from New York, one of the higher tax states. He had him up, and I was toward the front, and he said, "Look, I understand." And, 9 Republicans I think it was 13 Republicans voted against it for one reason or another. And that's why it's so hard to get anything accomplished. I mean, I'm new there, but now I see why, people had different reasons for if it affected their state and their voters. And there were things I would have, as a realtor and as a builder, would I love to see the capital gains rate lowered? Yeah. Would I love to see the mortgage interest deduction across all houses that someone built? Yeah. But you compromise, and the country deserved this, and the taxpayers deserve this. And but no, he actually praised Peter King, and he doesn't hold it against him. He understands him.
When you look at this divide that's going on here, one of the things that gets thrown around a lot, and I'm sure it's something that makes you as nuts as it makes me, and that is this idea of paying for the tax cut, paying for the tax cut, paying for the tax cut. How do we change the orientation and the narrative? How do we get to a place where we're not paying for the tax cut? We got to control our spending. How do we rewire the way people think? I know we're not going to do it with the media, but how do we do it with regular folks?
By doing it. One thing he mentioned, what's next on the agenda, and I do think it's a 85-90% chance that the Senate is going to adopt what the House had, and so we're going to pass it. I think both houses it'll be into law before Christmas. But the next reform that we're going to have to do is welfare reform. I can't tell you the number of people who are working 2 jobs to have the person in the next house getting welfare, and they're able to work. So welfare reform and spending. We've got a spending problem. We don't have an income problem. Politicians typically have a hard time saying no. Well, you're gonna see how we address that. It'll probably be the first of the year, but that's how on the agenda: welfare reform and get our spending under control, which I think we're going to do.
All right, let me take you finally. I hate to have to do this to go to the ugly part of all this, but what about these revelations that are coming out, and Senator Franken and all the sort of stuff that's going on here? We know that Jackie Spear and Barbara Comstock they did a hearing a couple of days ago. What's the sense there at the House of Representatives on the House side of things as these scandals move from Hollywood up to the Senate chamber, et cetera? How's this playing?
Well, it's sad. I mean, pedophilia, if it's true, is there's no hell hot enough for anybody that violates a child. And the things about the sexual harassment, the Franken and the other congressmen that were mentioned, it's sad, but in a good way, it's coming out. And you go back to the Clinton days when people were scared to say anything. The good part about all this, people are speaking up as they should. And it's something you're going to hear more about, and it shouldn't happen, particularly in Congress when members have power and they shouldn't use it over anybody. So I think the good part about it, people are speaking out, and I think you're going to have more. Now, I will tell you this: what's strange about the Moore situation is 30 days before he goes, or less than that, but before he goes faces the public, all this is coming up at the last minute. That's a little circumspect, but the bottom line is people are expressing their opinion and letting it out, which is a good thing.
So let me ask you this on the way out here. Philosophically, you say you come from the business world, you come from real estate. How much of this is because this swamp is so entrenched, and these people are here for a lot of years, and certainly we watched a mistrial take place yesterday in New Jersey, and a lot of that is circling around that culture that exists with that permanently entrenched political class. How much of that is endemic to Washington, because these are not people that typically come from the private sector where they have to comply with HR rules and regulations, and you can be fired. I mean, it really is a disconnect in terms of the cultures, right, Congressman?
It is, but and one of the shocking things that, as being a new member, is the fact the way that money controls politicians now. I can't tell you the number of people that vote a certain way because of the money that's given to them. That's sad. And I'm glad we've got a president that's calling out the press. They're calling out members that really ought to be looking after the country. The country's got cancer, in a way, and we got to take the medicine. And to argue about particular things that don't suit their constituency or don't suit the donors, That's why this tax reform is so refreshing. It's taking it away from the donors, the lawyers, and that type of thing.
Great stuff. Representative Ralph Norman out of South Carolina, Republican from South Carolina. We covered a whole bunch of stuff here with you. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you a very blessed Thanksgiving, a wonderful Christmas season, and look forward to visiting with you down the road, sir. Appreciate your time today.
My honor to be with you, Brett. Thank you.
Thanks much. That's Congressman Ralph Norman, Republican from South Carolina. I think we got a little bit of news out of that. Interesting to hear that the president, basically went right at Peter King in that meeting yesterday, and was direct about this. We also found out that it sounds like welfare reform may be next. Your reaction to that's a pretty big reveal. Wouldn't that be refreshing if that took place? I am Brett Witterble. This is the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. When we come back, Orrin Hatch brought it last night in a hearing with the Democrats going over the tax markup, and it was epic. Stick around. You'll hear it right here. It's Brett Witterble in for Laura Ingraham. It's the Laura Ingraham Show, your healthy radio addiction. We'll be back right after this.
There was a price to pay.
Oh, there was a price to pay last night. Let me tell you, there was a Senate Finance Committee meeting. So I'm on the air till 7 o'clock Pacific time here in San Diego. It's Brett Witterble sitting in for Laura Ingraham on Twitter at Ingram Angle. And check out LifeZet and watch Laura every night on the Fox News Channel. It's a great show. So Orrin Hatch is chairing this committee. And Sherrod Brown from Ohio and Ron Wyden, they're doing the class warfare thing with, we don't understand why this tax cut is going to be for the rich. It's all for the rich. All you want to do, Orrin Hatch, is give in to the rich and the rich and the rich. And you could see the fireworks going on because we get these satellite feeds in from like CBS and ABC and all this stuff. And watching these guys go back and forth, watching them go back and forth. So I activated the microphone and I was listening to what was being said. And ladies and gentlemen, a standing ovation-worthy beatdown from Orrin Hatch on these class warfare peddling liberals. Check it out. It's epic. Roll tape.
Just spare us the bank shots, spare us the sarcasm and the satire. And
I'm going to spare it, but I'm going to just say to you that I come from the poor people. And I've been here working my whole stinking career for people who don't have a chance. And I really resent anybody saying that I'm just doing this for the rich. Give me a break. I think you guys overplay that all the time, and it gets old. And frankly, you ought to quit it.
Mr. Chairman, the public believes it.
I'm not through.
Okay.
I get kind of sick and tired of it. True, it's a nice political play.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
it's not true.
With all due respect, I get sick and tired of the richest people
Regular order,
in the country
Mr. Chairman.
getting richer and
Regular order.
We do a tax
Regular order.
Middle class trade.
Regular order.
And over and over again. How many times do we do this before we learn this?
Listen, I've honored you by allowing you to spout off here. And what you said was not right. That's all I'm saying. I come from the lower middle class originally. We didn't have anything. So don't spew that stuff on me. I get a little tired of that crap. And let me just say something. If we work together, we could pull this country out of every mess it's in. And we could do a lot of the things that you're talking about, too. And I think I've got a reputation of having worked together with Democrats.
Let's start with Chip.
Not starting with Chip. I did it. I've done it for years. I've got more bills.
Start with Chip today.
I got more bills passed than everybody on this committee put together. And they've been passed for the benefit of people in this country. Now, all I can say is I like you personally very much, but I'm telling you, this bull crap that you guys throw out here really gets old after a while. To do it right at the end of this was just not right. And it takes a lot to get me worked up like this.
Call the roll.
Orrin Hatch. I mean, wouldn't you just once love to see Mitch McConnell try to impersonate that act and just go for it? I mean, really, look, normal day of the week, I'm not really thinking about Orrin Hatch, but I got to give a nice round of applause to Orrin Hatch for calling these people out on this stuff. You got to take them where you can get them. It's about time. 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. People have been patiently holding out. Let me talk to, is Deb in Maine still there? Let me talk to Deb in Maine if she is there. She dropped. Jay in Georgia. Let's go to Jay in Georgia. Let's go to Alan in Arizona. Alan, welcome to the show.
Good. Well, I'm happy to be here. So,
thank you, sir.
The one thing I want to say is really simple, and that is we're losing the rule of law. When the Congress can create a $15 million slush fund for pedophilia and everything else that they're doing, groping and you name it, I think it's time for the national committees, both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, to return the $15 million to the people.
Yep. Okay. We're going to talk about this. Top of this next hour, I've got some thoughts on this. I went and I did some digging, Alan. I appreciate that phone call. I went and I did some digging, and I found out how many settlements have been paid out. I don't know who they went to, but I found out how many settlements were paid out and how long of a period of time is covered by the $15 million, because this seems to be the big vagary out there. So don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. We've got another great hour of the Laura Ingraham Show straight ahead. My name is Brett Witterbull. I'm sitting in for Laura Ingraham today. The phone number to be a part of the conversation, hit anything we brought up, 855-40-LAURA. We'll be back right after this.
Your Healthy Radio Addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
It is Brett Witterbull sitting in for the Laura Ingraham Show, for Laura Ingraham on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. Now, I do this program from behind the blue curtain. That's right, I'm in occupied territory. The once golden state of California, now quite tarnished after Jerry Brown's near two-term complete dismantling of things that are good out here. You hear me from 3 to 7 in the afternoon on KFMB in San Diego, and I'm thrilled to be spending time with all of you today. Let me just say this. When I get up in the morning, I start pulling show prep for my show. I go to LifeZet. It is a great website, great information, great stories. I can't speak highly enough about it, and I always check out Laura Ingram's Twitter feed to see what she's up to over at Ingram Angle. And it is just a real pleasure to be here, spending time with each and every one of you. I'm actually trading tweets back and forth on my Twitter feed at Witterbull Show with Gary Condit. Yes, the real Gary Condit. Gary Condit and I are going back and forth, talking about a couple of different things. Wasn't it interesting to see sort of this dance that was going on yesterday with Al Franken saying he couldn't quite remember exactly what happened with the kiss and sticking his tongue down Leanne Tweeden's throat and checking her tonsils and all that kind of stuff, and he didn't really quite remember. Then that photograph comes out of him trying to grab her, and all that's right. He just couldn't remember. Yet this is the same guy, and this is the same political party that just went hammer and tong at Jeff Sessions, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, for the last year, but really in earnest for the last 6 months over his failure to remember certain things. Wasn't that rich? Wasn't that rich to see what was going on there between the Democrats spinning and flying around there with the Al Franken revelations and what he remembers and what he doesn't, and how they went hard after Jeff Sessions with, well, don't you remember shaking a guy's hand for 15 minutes last July in Cleveland? I was in Cleveland at the RNC, as many other broadcasters were, and I can tell you, I shook hands with a lot of people, and I probably forgot about 90% of them. I can't imagine the number of hands shaken by by a senator from the state of Alabama who is as high profile with President Trump as then Senator Sessions was. So it was interesting to see that little bit of kabuki theater taking place yesterday. But we keep hearing about this collusion stuff, right? This collusion. And, you know, it got me to thinking about the way this sales pitch has gone for this last year by the administration of Barack Obama and now into the resistance of the Democratic Party in the Congress and in the Senate. Collusion, right? Collusion's a terrible thing. Collusion's a horrible thing. Collusion is in and of itself a crime, they'll tell you. Even though, really, if you go look at Black's Law Dictionary and you go look at laws on the books out there, collusion isn't a crime. There's no inherent criminality in collusion. It's just a word that sounds bad. It's just a word that sounds scary. And over the course of the last year, since Citizen Trump became nominee Trump, became President-elect Trump, became President Trump, we have seen this collusion thing. Heck, MSNBC has made a cottage industry of doing nonstop Russia coverage. Even yesterday, in the midst of Bob Menendez's corruption trial ending in a mistrial in New Jersey, and Al Franken's revelations, they're still going Russia, Russia, Russia. Who did Jared Kushner send an email to? What happened with this guy? Papadopoulos, right? They're just doing everything they can. Collusion is the thing. Well, I got to digging late last night, a little bit on the later side as I was prepping for the show, sitting in for Laura Ingraham today. Can we talk about some collusion for a quick second? Can we talk about collusion that actually resulted in something so disgraceful as to be a lie to the American people? See, when I think collusion, you know what I think about? I think about the attack on September 11th, 2012, at the American annex in Benghazi. And I think about the collusion that took place between the media and the Obama administration, but between the media and Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. I think about the way the administration colluded by altering talking points and blaming the video. Remember, the video was to blame? The video was what was responsible for that attack, because then acting CIA boss Mike Morrell said, well, we can't come out with the truth because we'll be giving up sources if we tell them Al-Qaeda hit us. That's nonsense. You were a month and a half away from an election. You could not give up the truth on that because it would have spoken directly to the issues involving the failed foreign policy of lead from behind and embrace the Arab Spring and allow the jihadists to flourish across the Middle East and into the Mediterranean. Oh, there was collusion. Susan Rice, Samantha Power, Hillary Clinton, the talking points, every channel. Even the president himself was part of the collusion. The president, Barack Obama, went to the United Nations and gave a famous, blistering speech. The future must not belong to those who would slander the prophet. Remember that? Talking about how we are a tolerant country, we're a good country, and we're not going to tolerate people making fun of Islam or making fun of the Prophet Muhammad, and that's why we locked up this hapless guy. I think he's probably still in jail. Have anybody ever seen from him? Have anybody ever heard from that guy again? With that stupid video? The video is what set it off? That's actual collusion. Because you had an actual Secretary of State actually lie to the American people, actually lie to the Benghazi, the lost in Benghazi's families, Ty Woods, etc. You actually had a Secretary of State acknowledge in a hearing in 2015 in Hillary Clinton that she knew full well what was going on and traded emails with her daughter and the foreign minister of Turkey, and they all knew this was an Al-Qaeda attack, but they just couldn't tell the American people. That's collusion. Ben Rhodes, that's collusion with the talking points. That right there is collusion. And they'll try to tell you, Russia, that's all collusion. That's collusion. Collusion is, it's just a word, but the way it's used, the way it is used by the mainstream media in this Russia investigation is really remarkable. They lay out a bunch of disconnected facts and then they pronounce it collusion, and you're supposed to draw your own conclusion from their collusion narrative. Talk about colluding. How about the cover-ups that have gone on at the Congress involving harassment payouts? Now, Jackie Speer is a Democrat from the state of California. She's up from Northern California. Barbara Comstock is a Republican congresswoman from Virginia. And they were running this hearing there a couple of days ago, the same day that Jeff Sessions was testifying to the House Judiciary Committee, taking the slings and arrows from those geniuses about collusion. They were doing that hearing into basically congressional predators. And they revealed that there were two congressional predators. There were two that are still serving right now. They wouldn't name names, which I think is creepy. They also said there was a senator that is known for doing this, that is active right now. They also talked about the creep list and why staffers stay away from lawmakers who sleep in their offices and don't ride elevators and all those terrible things. And then Jackie Spear revealed a payout of $15 million to victims of harassment there at the Capitol. $15 million from a slush fund that nobody ever knew nothing about. Well, I did a little digging and we found out some stuff about it. So check this out. Check this little piece of information out. Now, admittedly, it's from hashtag fake news CNN, but let me give you the details. So these are $15 million in payouts to people who have suffered harassment or discrimination. They don't discern between how many people were for sex harassment or sex discrimination, who might have been a victim of racial discrimination or gender identity discrimination. It's just basically a discrimination and harassment sort of pile of money. The time period covered in that $15 million is 1997 to 2016. Got me so far? This is the shocking number. 260 settlements paid out since in that 20-year window. 260 payouts. Did you ever hear about any of them? I didn't. And I pay attention. I've got some college. I pay attention to the news. I never heard anything about these settlements. To her credit, and believe me, it's hard because she is a big-time leftist. To her credit, she's trying to get transparency put into place on this on these settlement payouts. And Spear and Comstock, what they're trying to do is push through this act called the Me Too Act, which is just about, training and sex harassment training and information and that sort of stuff. But I like this little bit. This little bit I think is really great. They are putting in effect through this legislation, if it passes both houses and becomes law, they are putting through a regulation that says if you are a Congress member or a senator and somebody in your office harasses and a settlement is paid out, you are on the hook personally to reimburse the taxpayers. Big round of applause. If you are the harasser and you are forced to pay out a settlement, you are on the hook. You must reimburse the taxpayers. You're going to pay for your own proclivities. You're going to pay for your staffers' proclivities. We're not paying anymore. Well, unfortunately, that $15 million has already flown the coop. And I would sure love to see that list because that's taxpayer money and we have a right to know who got paid what for doing what to whom. And I want to find out what happens there. But I do have to give credit where credit is due. And I like that transparency of saying now you guys are going to be financially on the hook. I would add one thing, though. And I would add one thing. I think we ought to apply a little bit of loser pays here. If you make a phony allegation and it is proven that you have been lying to try to shake someone down or make a political point or any of that sort of stuff, then guess what? You are on the hook to reimburse the taxpayers for the investigation. How about that idea? Let's make sure everybody's got skin in this game. We need honesty all the way around. Plenty of phone calls coming in. Plenty of room for you to be a part of the conversation as well. If you want to weigh in on collusion, the tax cut, what's going on in Hollywood, and Al Franken, and all the great stuff we've got that we've laid out so far on the Laura Ingraham Show. I am Brett Witterble. 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872 on Twitter at Ingraham Angle. It is the Laura Ingraham Show, your healthy radio addiction. We'll be back right after this. It is the Brett Witterble Show. No, it is not. It is the Laura Ingraham Show. See, I'm already wired in for the afternoon here. This is what's going on in San Diego. It is Brett Witterble in for Laura Ingraham on the Laura Ingraham Show. The Laura Ingraham Show, your healthy radio addiction. 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. Let's jump out on the phones. People have been patiently holding on. I want to start with, let's see, where shall we go? I will go to Dave in the Golden State of California. Dave, welcome to the show.
Sure. Hey, Brett, I got a couple things I want to share with you.
Go ahead.
One is on the taxes. I think they should have a cost of living index associated with that standard deduction. Because you know what happens is as we have the increase in the Fed taxes and also the interest rates and all that, and then after a while it's not the same as it was when you first got it. But I'm actually calling because I'm a vet, And I want to share an insight about Judge Moore.
Sure.
Okay, I think one of the things that's really important for the news media is to understand that different generations had different ways of dealing with things. And it's really important that you get someone from his generation to talk about what he went through. And let me give you an idea. I'm a vet myself.
Thank you for your service.
When we came back from overseas, we had a really unique situation. A lot of men had died. There were more women than men. And we were being forced to date all kinds of women. In other words, our friends would say, hey, go out with this girl. And our mother would say, hey, go out with this one. And our brother would say, hey, go out with this one. And in those days, you didn't ask people if they were 18, 17, or 16, because a lot of 16-year-olds married military guys that came back. My sister was one of those. And so here's the key. When we go overseas and we serve, we lose a portion of our life, okay? When we come back, we're looking for a way to gain that back. And you know how we do that? We marry a younger person because we kind of get a chance to relive our life that we lost. Mm-hmm. That's the judge married a woman who was 14 years his younger. It's just the way it is. In other words, because we had the VA benefits, the GI benefits, all those things, we were a great catch.
I understand what you're saying there, Dave, and I do appreciate your call and your service in helping to defend this country and keep us free so that we can enjoy the blessings of liberty. But I will disagree with one thing. Roy Moore is, yes, he's 71 years old, but in 1977, when that initial allegation was thrown out there, he was only 32 years old. I remember 1977, and 1977 was, modernity. It was the modern era. Even people can say, well, the culture in Alabama and all that. Look, Star Wars was in the movie theaters, okay? I remember the summer quite well. And, I get it. I get that there are cultural differences. I get that there are different ways that you did things back then in the South, what have you. The bottom line is, he's been the subject of this attack because he's running for a Senate seat. And he's not popular with the establishment Republicans, and he's not popular with the Democrats. I get it. I understand all of that. I think we need to move from a position of being defensive on this and say, listen, the people of Alabama are going to vote. They're going to decide good, bad, indifferent. That's just the way it's going to be. And we have to accept those realities. I don't want to try to psychologically profile Roy Moore, what motivated him. He was in the war. The bottom line is you've got allegations that came out. I think they're now finally on the aggressive side of defending against these allegations. I don't know that I believe any of these poll numbers that are out there because I don't think people are telling the pollsters the truth. And we have to wait and see how this is all going to shake out. I do know this, and I will throw this little caveat out there. Gloria Allred never sues anybody. Have you noticed that she never files a lawsuit? She's, as I've described her, she's like Flava Flav in Public Enemy without the big clock around her neck. She's a hype man. She hypes these things. She holds press conferences. She launches the feeding frenzy and then never files lawsuits. Never. She just tries to pressure people into either resigning or moving. Do you know what she's asking for? She's not suing Roy Moore. She's not going after Roy Moore, Judge Moore, for this Beverly Nelson deal. She wants a Senate hearing into this. Well, I'm sorry. I'm in California, and I don't really think the Senate's got time to do a hearing into whether or not Roy Moore, Judge Moore, signed a yearbook, talked to this woman, did any of that sort of stuff. If he gets elected and they're going to, decide it goes to the ethics committee or whatever's going to happen inside the Senate, so be it. But I sure as heck would rather spend time on Al Franken and Bob Menendez and his curious accumulation of $105 million in gifts and his interesting dating patterns as well. All right, we got a great guest coming up here in just a few moments. We got plenty of time for your phone calls as well. Wait till you hear what's next. I am Brett Witterble. It is the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA, the number to be in touch. It's your healthy radio addiction, the Laura Ingraham Show. Back right after this.
Do you want to be great at reading body language, developing persuasion and influence, as well as master rapport and social interaction? What if I told you that you would learn from top performers like NBA superstar Shaquille O'Neal, former CIA director Michael Hayden, and brilliant thinkers like Dirty Jobs Mike Rowe? Take a minute right now and subscribe to the Art of Charm podcast with me, Jordan Harbinger, and you'll hear how I pull out the secret psychology, life experience, and wisdom that can only be learned from them. You'll hear Shaq talk about how to manage your career and how to know who to trust when everyone's out to get something from you. You'll discover how to think critically from Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and even how Tony Hawk's life as a skateboard icon will influence how you think about your career and relationships in a whole new way. This show is for you if you want to outcompete, outperform, and outthink everyone around you, and it's the only place you'll get practical, applicable strategies from every single episode. Since you're all about learning from the absolute best, download and subscribe for free right now and upgrade your brain 4 times a week at podcastone.com or in the Podcast One app.
And I am Brett Witterbull, sitting in for Laura Ingraham on your Healthy Radio Addiction, The Laura Ingraham Show. Be sure to follow Laura on Twitter at Ingraham Angle. And, of course, check out LifeZet, lifezet.com. Lots of great stuff there at the website, great stories. One of the stories that caught my attention just in the last few days is this discussion about whether or not the Pentagon is going to pay for soldiers' sex reassignment surgeries, right? We were just talking about how outrageous it was that the Congress is paying $15 million out for settlements of abuse and harassment without us finding anything out about that. The Pentagon is going to pay for sex reassignment surgery for soldiers in the military, and it's important to look at this for a number of reasons. The culture battle, the push on transgenderism, and, of course, the fiscal irresponsibility component. I want to welcome to the program Walt Heyer. Walt is a former transgender man. He actually had transitioned to a female for several years, but he now speaks out against transgenderism, and I wanted to have him come on and speak with us about this phenomenon, especially as it relates to the military and our payment for these reassignment surgeries. Walt, thank you for making time for us. Welcome to the Laura Ingraham Show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad to be on.
So when you see sort of the state of the discussion in this country on transgenderism, and when you see where we are and how it is now affecting military readiness issues, we've got judges intervening, we've got a lot of stuff happening. Where are we here? Help us understand through your lens and through your life experience, kind of how we got to this place.
Yeah, we got to this place because the advocacy for, pushing this agenda, but what's missing from the conversation that I want to bring back into the conversation is the fact that 90 to 95% of the people who are what we call detransitioning, who have gone through it like I have, I've seen now a total rush in the number of people who are detransitioning. I'm meeting someone tomorrow night. I get letters from them all the time. So the question for the Pentagon is, they came up with an original estimate of $130,000 per person to pay for their transitions. And what I want to know is, are they willing to pay another $130,000 to $150,000 to detransition them? Because they're going to be on the hook for these people for their medical care, perhaps for life. And so we know now that these transgender people, this particular population, has an attempted suicide rate generally over 40%. Many of them, 62% of them, are suffering from undiagnosed and untreated psychological, emotional, and sexual disorders. So they're really putting a great deal of weight on the soldiers going into the service. And there's a lot of really great servicemen that are serving this country with honor and distinction. Why do we want to dump people onto that population who needs such extreme care? I don't get it.
Additionally, look, let's be honest. We've got enough pressures going on inside the VA just for treatment of PTSD of a more conventional sort, or of injuries suffered, or of illnesses suffered as a result of service. Now you're talking about adding a whole new dimension. What happens when somebody goes through the service and gets the transition surgery, and then comes out of the service and realizes, while they've got the VA care, that they want to detransition? You're talking about an unbelievably complex, complicated web of change here, aren't we?
Yes, and suicide rates among the military without being transgender are very high. And as we stand today, as you and I are talking today, they can't even care for the people who are struggling in the VA hospitals, who are sitting in the waiting room trying to get care. Why do we want to add a whole nother layer of people? And the expense and cost, not only is it unnecessary, it does absolutely nothing to help the military in its readiness to be a fighting team.
Let me ask you, from your personal perspective and your own personal journey, was it more personally traumatic for you to enter into the transformation or to exit from the transformation?
Oh, by far exit from it, because you have you have a whole new set of anxieties and depression and issues to detransition. And what happens is people start to, it's funny. The funniest thing about it is, when you transition, everybody thinks you're bright, brilliant, wonderful, exciting, relevant.
Right.
When you tell them, I don't want to do this anymore, they think you're nuts. And so the truth is, it's the opposite. You're nuts for doing it, and you're coming into reality when you're detransitioning. It's just not something that the military shouldn't be turned into a sex change clinic, or provide such extreme psychiatric care for a population who is going to cause the military a lot of financial difficulty.
Visiting with Walt Heyer, he's a former transgender man, transitioned to female for several years, and now speaks out against transgenderism. Let me ask you this, though. During this time of transition and then detransitioning, I'm assuming you were living a conventional life. You had a job, you had a life, you had all that sort of stuff going on. Can you imagine those sets of pressures if you were to be deployed, if you were to be heading over to Iraq, Syria, South Korea, any of these things that would just add to that stress level? Could you imagine having gone through that all at the same time?
Well, I think that is just, they will find the difficulty of training someone who's already under the stress of trying to decide who they are, what their identity is, and throw them into this mix. It is just not able to get my head around why the military would put themselves in a position where they have to care for this population. It's totally unnecessary.
Yeah. Is it just that political correctness is everywhere? Is it just, I guess that's what it comes down to, right? It's you must accept and tolerate everything all the time, everywhere, forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah, and when we realize that this population, according to studies, not according to Walt Heyer, according to studies, the 62% of them are struggling already with psychological, emotional, and sexual disorders. I don't understand how the military becomes either a psychiatric hospital or a sex change clinic is going to help them, from the angle of the Pentagon, develop a fighting team. It just does not make one bit of sense.
Walt Heyer, we appreciate your voice in this in this discussion, especially given your unique experience and your life experience, and your having been down this road and now back. We do appreciate you coming in and raising the alarm and reinforcing a lot of what I think many of us already sort of believe in terms of laying out money and commitments in this way. We appreciate you coming by. If we don't get to talk, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving and a great Christmas season, and look forward to speaking with you down the road.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And watch the detransitions. That's a growing number in this population, people wanting to revert back as I did.
Will do. Walt, all the best. Thanks so much for coming by.
You bet. My pleasure.
Take care. That's Walt Heyer. Certainly a lot to consider there. Jim is in Illinois, wants to consider this. Jim, welcome to the program. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I commend that guy for being honest and giving us the straight story of what's going on there in the military. You and I both know that our country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. We were founded as a country of morality, spirituality, and laws. And now the Obamanites, your left-wing socialists, have turned this into the socialist game. It's a game where, like, we will find the kinkiest, far-out thing we can fund, and we'll steal money from the taxpayers and turn it into a circus. They have turned the perversion into a circus, and I blame Obama directly for 99% of it.
Well, listen, I think it is a group effort, right? I do understand that, and I appreciate your call today, Jim, in Illinois. I do think that administration is most directly responsible for what we've seen. But understand this: you can open up news articles anywhere, Google or Twitter or any place, and you can find articles about people who have children who are 3 and 4 years old, who they're saying, well, this child needs to transition. I'm going to have them transition. I am very close to somebody who was a teacher here in California, who shall remain nameless. But very close to somebody who is a teacher, and they've told me stories teaching in the early elementary grades, kindergarten, first, second. You will have children coming into school, and their parents will say, "Well, today, Bobby wants to be Brianna, or whatever name they want to assign," and they're experimenting and they're trying different sorts of outward displays of identity and orientation and things like that. And you look at these the educational establishment as this incubator for this social change. This is where it all comes from. I mean, we are scavenging parts for fighter jets to be able to go run ops off the coast of Korea. I mean, I'm sorry, did we hit the lottery and I missed the report in the news? I just Patrick in Texas, you are preaching, Patrick, right out of my hymnal. What I just said here, Patrick. Go ahead, let's hear it.
Yes, if you want to argue about the psychological component, that's fine. But I think it's rather despicable talking about the money part. When you consider the gazillion dollars that we throw into this military complex, while these expensive fighter planes that branches of the military don't even warn, and all the waste and corruption. I mean, these people are doing things that most of us are unwilling to do. They're serving. So let's please get the money aspect out of it. I think that's pretty despicable to bring that up.
No, I disagree, Patrick. I think the money is the thing here. The money, there are finite amounts of resources out there available, and I think the very first priority should always be making sure we have the finest equipped and supplied military in the history of mankind. We want our men and women serving honorably and safely and coming back home in one piece. We have got to give them the right stuff. We do not, if we're looking for people to pay for medical procedures, go get a job in the private sector and do it on your own dime.
They're sacrificing, in some cases, your lives for our freedom. And what it costs for these handful of transgender people is $250,000 error.
A quarter million dollars to do the transition and the detransition. That's a serious number, Patrick. We're not talking about $5,000, $7,000. We're not talking about that sort of stuff. We're talking about very serious money. We'll continue the conversation straight ahead. 855-40-LAURA, 855-405-2872. It is the Laura Ingraham Show, your healthy radio addiction. I'm Brett Witterble, back right after this. I am Brett Witterble, sitting in for Laura Ingraham. Let's go out on the phones and talk to Dick in Alabama. Dick, welcome to the program.
Good morning. The reason I'm calling is regarding the Roy Moore issue. People are missing the real point of this whole thing. It has nothing to do with Roy Moore. They're attempting to disenfranchise the Alabama voters, selecting their own representation, something we fought for in the 18th century. We've already had 2 elections for this seat, a primary and a party runoff, and then we're going to have the final election December 12th. and they're doing 535 expatriates in D.C. are doing their best to nullify our right to vote and disenfranchise our voters. So I think we need to do something about that, because 535 self-interested political hacks should not disenfranchise 5 million Alabama citizens.
Dick, let me ask you this, because you are there in the state. Is it just wall-to-wall more coverage 24 hours a day? Is that all you're getting, or just how intense is the coverage of this story?
It's very intense here, and what I see happening is using this media process to try and put Doug Jones, the Democrat, in office. If we want to do that, let the Alabama citizens do it.
Yep. It's great stuff. Dick in Alabama, certainly keep in touch with the show. Let us know what you think as we move on down the road. I am Brett Witterble, sitting in for Laura Ingraham. That's an important point. I'm wondering if this does fall under the heading of a dirty trick, a political dirty trick. I'm wondering if they sprung it too soon, if they did it too soon. Had this come out a week before the election, not 28 days before the election, would it have played differently? Did they fire this shot too soon? Because now it's going to be baked into the cake and processed in, and at some point I think that people in that state are going to start to say, they're just dogpiling them now. Ricardo, Tennessee, wants to talk about the Franken photo. What's going on, Ricardo?
Hey, buenos dias, Brett.
Hey.
Hey, one real quick, using a term I've come up with a long time ago called grubered. If you thought you could keep your doctor, you got grubered. If you thought Benghazi was because of a video, you got grubered. If you thought Russian collusion was real, you got grubered. And everybody remembers the Gruber statements. We're coming on the stupidity of the American voters, Democrats.
Yep.
So grubered is a term I like to use, and applies in so many different areas for Democrats. And, I want to talk about the Franken thing, but real quick, Roy Moore, this is going to be a litmus test of whether the Democrats, these 80s policies of, run against somebody instead of running on policies. It's not working anymore, Democrats. You're going to have to wake up. And Al Franken, this is the most disgusting picture I've ever seen of a public official just treating a woman, objectifying a woman, and absolutely.
Yes.
And I put up on Facebook that if you disagree with me, then you put up a picture that shows a public figure with more disdain for women, I think.
Oh, 100%. Home run, man. That's a home run knockout punch. We know that Al Franken, he was way out of line with that. I wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. Anybody decent wouldn't be doing that. Are you kidding me? It is a disrespect, and that is pure elitism. That's what it is, folks. 855-40-LAURA to be a part of the conversation. We are going to be back right after this.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Hey everybody, I'm Heather Dubrow.
And I'm Dr. Terry Dubrow.
Every Friday, check out my podcast, Heather Dubrow's World.
We also have the Dr. and Mrs. Guinea Pig Show every Tuesday.
So don't forget iTunes and Podcast One. Tune in to Dr. and Mrs. Guinea Pig on Tuesdays and Heather Dubrow's World every Friday.